Hello, my name is Stephen Brennan, and I'm here for the peer review at the end of our Excel report. Why are why is it important to identify outliers? By definition, outliers are points that are distant from remaining observations. As a result, they can potentially skew any given data. It is therefore very important to detect and adequately deal with outliers. When dealing with outliers, you should only disregard them if you're 100% sure they are outliers, meaning they're not part of the data and they are a clear mistake. They also affect the mean and median, obviously, um, which in turn affects the error of any data set. When you plot the error, you might get big deviations if an outlier is in a data set, which is usually very easy to spot, but it is possible for a little outlier. As an example, I have these two picture graphs right here from our, I believe, impaired driving. This is just the percentage of 70-year-olds getting in car accidents, I believe, if I remember correctly. And as we can see, the trend line, the average, really, it's actually on a slight decline, but it's basically in between all these points. But then when you add an outlier to it, right here, as I did with this 9%, it made the whole trend line go up because the whole average is up just because that number is so high. And something like this, it's very easy to identify and nip it in the bud and fix your mistake. Question two, why should we even bother analyzing half-lives? I mean, what's the point? Half-lives enable the dating of artifacts like fossils. However, it also allows us to calculate how long we store radioactive waste until it's safe to fully dispose of and get rid of. In our case, it's the drugs we're testing, like with the ibuprofen and the three drugs that we did on the side. I did caffeine, Adderall, and aspirin, FYI. And of course, by proxy, it enables doctors to measure the appropriate time intervals to use the drug effectively, or efficiently, and safely. Because you don't want to, well, overdose or underdose. You don't want to pay for an expensive drug and have it not do anything. It can also come in handy for a regular individual to learn how to calculate half-life to self-diagnosed ones, like diet information or something like that, like vitamin deficiency. Um, and it's just good to know something like that, although I would still recommend a professional for something like that, like a doctor, somebody who's trained. But as we can see with all the half-lives, they're all pretty much the same when the average. They just go down and then flatten out, as you would imagine they would. You first consume it, and then it just progressively diluting itself in your blood. And yeah, they're pretty much visually the graphs at a glance are all the same. At the percentages going down and just question three, why are there two different y-axes on some graphs, especially graphs that we use on this Excel report? So with correlating data, having two different axes on one graph is the best solution to show the data in most graphs that are comparing them. In layman terms, it is basically two graphs on top of each other. That's how I just perceive it, just an easy perception of it. However, what I find interesting is the fact that in most cases, when there are two y-axes and the two different axes usually have two different types of data, like they're measured differently. Like in all these graphs above, we always used BT corn for miles, um, or oh no, I think that one's wrong. That one says millions. Well, either way, that's corn planted, and the other one was an abstract piece of data that correlated with it, like um, that. Like I can't pronounce it for some reason, and bowel disease, and if we go up, deaths, and that word, arthritis. That's the word. And no, that's what I already said. However, just like there seems to be a relation between something doesn't mean there is a relation. There is a near infinite there's an infinite amount of variables that could be affecting the thing you are researching. I'm not I'm not saying they couldn't be related. I'm just saying we should keep a clear mind and say it's also very possible that they're not related. I remember there was a story in France a couple of centuries ago of how this guy taught a horse how to do math. And everybody thought it was amazing, and the horse owner thought it was amazing. It was this remarkable piece of human achievement, I guess, teaching a horse how to do math. And what he did math by, he showed the horse an equation and he tapped his hoof for how many it summed up to. But then a scientist took a better look at it, and he realized that the horse wasn't doing math. The horse was reacting to the owner. He was reacting to the owner's facial expressions when he was getting close to the answer, and then when he got to the answer, he started celebrating, so the horse would stop, and then he would get food. And there's some psychological science name for it, like the Mandela effect. That's not the Mandela effect, obviously, but it has a name, and I forgot what it was. But I just thought that was interesting. It just shows, just don't assume something because it correlates with something. That's why science is hard, in lack of better terms. Question 4, why do we correlate our data? We use correlation to find empirical evidence to find relationship between two different sources of data. When two sets of data are strongly linked together, we say that it have a high correlation. Correlation is positive when the values increase together. Correlation is negative when one value decreases as another increases. However, just like I said before, just because there seems to be a relationship between something doesn't necessarily mean there is a relationship. That doesn't mean there isn't one, but there could be one and there couldn't be one. Because, like I said above, there are just so many variables that could be affecting anything. And question 5, how are how are expense records useful? An expense record organized chart used to list things you spend money on, basically a financial report, like what we did, for a certain period of time. It helps put financial records down on an easy to read spreadsheet. Sounds familiar. Which, in my opinion, this just really helps me to understand it and read it. I mean, when we did all this, it was just easy to follow. I mean, I did months, and then you have how much money you make in a month, how much income you have left at the end of the month. Then you do the year, basically the same thing times 12, and then we did 5 years for just a random reason, and just multiply that by 5. Generally, of course. There was some rounding involved, but it's just an easy to read spreadsheet. Also, having everything written down really helps me not spend money. I'm not that I'm a big spender anyway. It's just if it's written down, like if I'm looking at my bank account constantly, I'm usually not willing to spend money. But when I have cash for some reason, I spend it more quickly. Which for my sister, I know it's the opposite. When she has cash, she saves it. When she sees money in the bank, she spends it. That's just how my brain works, I guess. Anyway, back on track. They can be used to keep track of your expenses, but more importantly, it helps you predict the future finances like we did here. Estimated, of course, to the best of our abilities. Also very useful for small businesses, for those with financial reports, are a good way to keep track of their expenses. Because if you're a small business, just a simple Excel spreadsheet is very, very simple to use. For business, you might want to use Access. If you ever used Access, that's a pain to use. Yeah, and Excel is very easily accessible, which leads to I assume the number one software to keeping records of stuff like this. I mean, it does math for you. It's a spreadsheet. It's very easy to use, and like I said, very widely accessible. Is it important to deviate our money? And what I mean by that is basically savings account. Oh, blocking my face. I don't know if the screen recorded that. In my opinion, that is a definite yes. We all should. In my ideal financial scenario, I would have two savings accounts, the normal one and the unforeseen expenses like accidents, unforeseen damages. Maybe you have to pay something from your parents or family or close friends. Um, where's it? Oh, yeah, right there. Financial report. And you can see I did that with, wait, where did I do that? Well, I got my savings here. Yeah, I did that with savings. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And basically, I just took my yearly total and I subtracted that, and I found my savings out of everything. But this random issues is basically I would make a second savings account. I show this in my financial spreadsheet. One account is to save your own skin in a time of need, and the other is a well-deserved vacation. Oh well, and when I said save your skin, save your family's or friend's skin in anybody's time of need. And people need to realize needs are more important than wants. little important factor that most people don't realize. I feel it's the biggest problem. That is definitely the biggest problem, especially with my sister. And not only not the only one in mind, but it's the biggest one nevertheless.